Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to seal a clock with resin. I'm going to use FAMOWOOD Glaze Coat High Gloss Craft Resin. You can get this on Amazon, you can get it in Lowe's, places like that. It's great for smaller projects especially. So I painted this in a previous video and then I cleaned it after it had sat for a few weeks and dried really well, I cleaned it with Dawn dish liquid and water. I've got the back taped off with masking tape and then I cut away the edge so it's a nice clean edge. That keeps the drips when it comes down underneath. It keeps it from drying in drips along the back, which makes it nice and bumpy and very hard, like you can't get it off. So my recommendation is to tape it and then you peel the tape off and you don't have those little lumpy bumps of resin underneath. So I've oriented it. I had it marked. I wanted to make sure I found the right marks. And I also have a piece of masking tape that I rolled up and it's sticking out of the center of the hole. I don't want the resin going down into that hole because then I can't put my clockwork pieces in. And I also, this is a trick that I learned from Jill Jackson. Her YouTube channel is Sister Earthification. She is pretty much an expert on resin. She always sprays her finished pieces with a clear spray. So I sprayed it with Krylon triple thick clear glaze. That just kind of seals it in. It makes sure that you don't have any silicone or OGX or anything popping through to make your resin crater or, break apart in any form or fashion. So the one thing I want to do first, before I put the resin on, is I want to go ahead and put the numbers down because I'm going to put the resin over and I want it to be sealed in with the numbers. So I got my clock kit at Michael's. It is Art Minds, and let's see, I think I have the right one. It's always good for you to double check. And it has instructions, but I've done several, so I know how to do it now. So the way you know it's going to work, poke a hole in this masking tape underneath. And I'm pretty sure I need the larger one, not this size, so that's why you double check before you do anything, because if you don't have the right clockwork size, it's not going to fit your project. So if I can't use it for this one, I can use it on if I do a pour on an album record, they're super thin, I can use it on that. So I think I got it's not deep enough. So these little pieces, I don't want to lose any of these pieces. So I'm going to put them back. And I can use this on another. That's why it's always good to check. And so I wasn't sure when I went and purchased it. So what you need, I bought the wooden clock base at Michael's as well. So this is a 3/8 of an inch, so it's less than ½ an inch thick as far as what sticks up from the battery area. And you need the 3/4 inch, which is this one right here. It has a much longer shaft there that goes through the hole of the wooden clock. So this is the one I need. So I'm going to put this one aside. So again, since this is a wooden piece that's almost an inch thick, it's not quite, but almost, then you have to have the deeper clock mechanism. And the other thing to be aware of is these hands on these clock mechanisms are really, really thin metal. Because when I pushed down on the plastic, it just slightly bent the hands. So that's something you've got to be aware of, is these things are extremely delicate. The other thing that you cannot see but there's an actual plastic coating that they put over the top of the brass numbers or the gold numbers. So it's a little plastic coating. You have to peel those off as well. I just want to make you aware of that. So this clock mechanism is going to be on the back side of the clock, and it has an insert for a AA battery, and there is a little washer thing that screws on right here. So you unscrew that. So you have that piece, and then there's a little nut that comes off of there. You're going to remove that. And then there's a flat washer, gold one, and a black rubbery one. So those are all the separate pieces that come in this kit. And I want to point out to you, if you can see this up close, that slot in the center of the mechanism right there is not a circle. It is an oval, or almost like a rounded rectangle. So that's key for you to notice that when you're putting it onto this piece right here, which if you look at it up close, let me focus in a little bit. This shaft right here is the same shape. It is like a rectangle with a little bit of curved edges. It is not a regular round shape. So the key to getting this all to fit on correctly is to get those two shapes lined up perfectly when you're attaching everything. I'm not attaching any of that until it's totally resined and that part is finished and cured. I just wanted to show you that before I got started. But see, the shaft on this one is longer, so it goes totally inside the circle, and I've got masking tape to block it, but see how it is deeper than the thickness of the wood. That is what you have to have. The other one that I got was 3/8 of an inch. It wasn't deep enough. So I'm going to take all these pieces and put these aside because we don't need them yet, but it's very important that you don't lose any of these little tiny pieces before you need to put them on your clock. So I'm just going to set these little pieces aside. The only thing I need right now is the numbers. So I'm going to set this up. I had marked, so I'm going to put a 12, a 3, a 6, and a 9. And I'm not going to do all the other numbers. I don't think they're necessary. So these bend and then they break off. So the 6 will be down here at the bottom, and I've already marked about an inch inward of the outskirts of the circle, and then it's just a matter of making sure you've got it nice and straight. These are plastic, so you have to be very careful when you're bending them that you don't break the number either. And then if you have a piece that doesn't come off, you can continue to work on getting that off. You can use a razor, scissors. It's pretty soft plastic, but it is there, so I want you to be aware of it. So I'm going to put the 3. I'm pressing down really firmly. Now I'm going to get these can go up or down, so it looks like a 6 or a 9. Totally break that off and trim away that edge. So this will go where I've marked this one. And then I need a 1. And a 2. All right. So I've got the numbers pressed down. Make sure my tape is in to keep that resin. I'm going to cut off part of it here. it's not sticking up so much, but I want to make sure that hole is totally sealed in so that no resin seeps down in my hole. Otherwise, the clock part, the shaft will not fit through that opening. So I'm going to mix up about 5 ounces of resin, and so that does not require a lot of resin. This is a 10-inch clock, and I do have a little 5x7 that I had done a pour on with the metallic. It's really pretty, and I've even scratched it a bit, but I thought this would be a good one to resin. It came from a little 5x7 frame, and then I can stick it back in the frame. So it's glass. I'm going to tape off the back side for drips as well. The back side's pretty messy, but it's going to go in a picture frame anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going up to the edges of the glass. So you can use masking tape, you can use blue painter's tape, whatever's convenient for you. So I always tear my tape at angles, and that way they don't cross over the ends of your piece. So I'm going to put this aside, and this will be something that I put whatever leftover resin I have. So I've got little 5-ounce cups, 5.5 ounces. So I'm going to need about half of both of these to be filled up with the resin. And I'm going to mark it with a black marker just so that I get equal amounts, because it's very important to have equal amounts of resin. There's 2 parts, there's an A part and a B part. So you have to have equal amounts. So they're both marked, and you just want to make sure that they are even and level. These don't have measurements on them, that's why I marked them, but you know, some cups do have measurements on them for resin mixing and that kind of thing. This particular one I don't. And the planned amount is that it will be about 1/16 of an inch thick when it dries and seals in the paint on the top of the surface. So it's always good to read the directions and take precautions. I am going to put a mask on while mixing this. This is a 2-part mixing system, so we're going to pour equal amounts of the resin, which is the A side. This is the A part, and the hardener is the B part. So we're going to do equal amounts and then mix them in together, and we're going to stir for 6 minutes. Then we're going to transfer it into a clean cup and do the same thing and stir for 6 more minutes. So there's a 12-minute mixing process, and I obviously will zoom through that for you. So I've got a stir stick, I've got my little mixing cups. I am going to wear gloves. You definitely want to wear gloves, and you do want to put on a face mask and have good ventilation for safety purposes. It's just safer that way. So first I'm going to put my mask on. I'll be right back. All right. So the first one is part A. I'm going to put this down on the table so I know that it's level. So I get it right up to that mark. See, this is the part where it's not messy. The part that's messy is when you do the pouring on to your piece. So again, equal amounts. Then I'm going to transfer the one part into the other part. I'm going to start my timer. It's going to look cloudy at first. And you're also going to find out that it will heat up as you get it closer to the finished part of mixing, it will heat up and warm. You can feel the warmth when you're holding the cup. And it's also very good to continually take your stick and go around the edges of the inside of whatever you're mixing in. It just continually makes sure that none of that part A or B gets separated and clings to the insides of the container. Okay, so we've made it through the first 6 minutes. I decided to put it into a cup that has measurements on it, that has more space. This one is an 8-ounce plus cup. So I'm going to transfer all of this into the bigger cup so I'm not close to the edge as far as mixing, and I don't want to go over my edges. I was trying to stir very carefully in this little 5.5-ounce cup because it was right near the top. So I'm just scraping around all my sides. Now I'm going to start the timer again at 6 minutes. And now I can stir again. The timer is up. It's clear now, but there's lots of bubbles that you can see, but that's okay. And it feels warm to the touch, which is a good thing. So we're going to set up 4 little cups to elevate it. The other thing you want to do is just make sure that you are level both ways. I'm going to also put it on this. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit on this one and just going to go ahead and let it spread out. I'm going to move my phone out of the way. You don't want your phone in the way. I'm not putting a lot on this. I just want to seal in the pretty metallics. That glass-like appearance is just so, it makes anything look beautiful. It just really makes the colors pop and look three-dimensional again. Like when it's first wet, when you first do the pour, that's the cool part about it. So I think that's all nice and covered. And then you need a heat gun or a torch to just make sure that any air bubbles are out of it. This also helps me to see just the few little spots that I missed. Now we're ready to pour on the clock. So I'm going to start in the center, and like I said, I'm going over the numbers. So with the dents and the centers of the numbers, just making sure it goes into every part of that number. It's going to totally self-level. So I'm just helping it spread out and let it go over the edges just a bit. I didn't put a ton on because I just want a nice thin layer. And then I can also, just kind of add a little bit with my stick. And I'm also going to bring my fingers around the edge of this multiple times, but right now I'm just making sure that I've got it on the surface everywhere. So it's a good idea just to, look from the sides, from different angles in the light. I kind of make sure I kind of go around the edge to just make sure it goes over the edge really well. So I'm going to heat this again. Well, I haven't heated this one yet. Alright, so now I'm going to just take my finger around the edge. Make sure that I can even put some on my finger. It's amazing how it warms up in that cup and you can feel the heat, which is what I'm feeling, is the warmth of the resin. The other thing too is you can go underneath the bottom lip and just make sure you catch as many drips as possible. That'll just make it an easier cleanup when it's all said and done. I'm going to heat it one more time. And again, I'm just going to check to make sure that I have everything free and clear, no dust, no particles, no hair, no nothing. So there it is. And what happens was after I let it sit overnight, tomorrow I'll finish this video with the finished look so you can see it. I can hold it and show you the shine and the glassy look. The one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this canvas and prop it up on cups right above the surface so that no dust or anything lands on it. That's the other important part about doing resin, is you have to cover it overnight to keep it from dust and fur and things like that. So I've got enough resin left. I'm going to do this canvas. So resin is kind of like the consistency of corn syrup. It's very thick and sticky and, that consistency where it kind of feels like it doesn't want to move a lot. Heat it. And you only have a certain amount of time that you can work with this before it starts to, kind of change on you a little bit. So you have to work efficiently and fairly quickly to get it done. So this one I did not tape. So I'm going to have to continually wipe under it for a little while. Make sure you catch any little divots or craters that you see in the light. So I will see you when it's finished and dried tomorrow. I'll show you the end of the video. I'll be back. So I'm getting ready to install the clock parts on the clock face, and I wanted to show you another one I had done. I did it just a little bit differently. I put all the numbers around and I resined the numbers I stuck them on and then I resined it. I stuck these on, and this has 3 coats of resin, so they are totally sunk into the resin. So I want you to see that. And I also want to show you the back side. I taped off the back side with masking tape, and there's just a little bit left to take off, but I want to show you that if you tape it on the back, but if you tape on the back side, what happens is those resin drips will peel off very easily, as opposed to letting the resin come over the edges with no tape. Then they are stuck on that wood and it's very hard to get them off. So if you tape the edges, you can peel the edges around and totally remove those drips that are on that side of the back side. And that way you don't have a lumpy bumpy mess of resin on the back side. And also I wanted to show you too, you always make sure when you put your mechanism through the wood that you line up the top where it hangs. This is where it's going to hang on a screw or whatever. Make sure that that lines up exactly with the 12. Just, you know, FYI, sometimes you don't think about stuff like that. I just want to make sure to mention that. And on this one, I resined it after I painted it black, but I always paint the backs of my clock black. But then I resined after. I wanted to show you the difference and see how the resin has dried in lumps. You're not going to see it because it's going to be against a wall, but to make your life easier, make sure to tape it off really well, and then you won't have those lumps. And then I'll paint this black just like I did the other one. So back to the top of this, I wanted to show you on the directions. It's Art Minds and it's a clock kit. It'll show you a diagram of the way the pieces go on. And this also shows a clock face, which does not come in this kit. But if you had a clock face, you could put the clock face and it would be like a brass plate that goes in the center, and then you don't have to put the numbers around the outside. But I wanted as much of this to show as possible because it was such a beautiful pour with the metallics and the blue and everything. So, and it does, you know, when you put resin on, it magnifies and it also deepens just ever so slightly. It intensifies your colors, so I'm just wanting to bring that to your attention. And I never use the rubber washer that comes with it. It shows it going on the post first. I don't put the rubber washer on because then it would show on the front side, and I don't want the black rubber washer to show. So I've already put the bolt down, and I used little small pliers to hold the bolt while I totally tightened it down. And when you tighten it, you've got to make sure you're holding the back side of this so that when you're screwing that little washer on there, it will get really nice and tight, because if you don't, then this on the back is going to flip-flop and it's not going to stay in one place. The other little trick is if you go ahead and install the clock mechanism through here, you can resin it and it'll resin straight up to that post, and that will hold it into place for sure as well. But you have to make sure that this is secure in the back exactly where the 12 is. And you could tape it down or whatever to hold it in place while you're doing the resin. I resined mine first, and that's why I had the masking tape in the center and I had to pull it out. I had some issues with it going into the hole just a little bit, so I had to kind of carve out a little bit of that resin with a razor knife. And what I did is I just used some clear nail polish in the center to finish out that center part. So again, I wanted to tell you that so the first piece just goes down. It goes right down over that post. But like I mentioned, the post is threaded, but there are two straight edges and then it's curved on either end, so it's not a full circle post. It is straight and then it has a curve and a curve. And so you have to make sure that this piece, which also is straight on both sides and then a curve on the top and the bottom, you have to make sure that that is totally lined up with the piece, with the post, so that it goes down as far as it should, and when it doesn't go anymore, then you know that you've got it on there, and it should be parallel with the other arm, and there should not be any, bending. It should not be loose. It should stay right where it is. So you make sure that that is on really well. So this was the piece that is down towards the bottom, underneath, and this is what tightens the clock mechanism to the post. This is what tightens it down. That's what I was talking about. I used my little needle nose pliers to do that with. And then, so I put the first hand on, the hour hand, and then the minute hand. And then you're going to take this little tiny, it's a little tiny nut, and you're going to screw it on the very top. And that's going to keep this minute hand nice and tight, so it does not, it's not flexible at all. It doesn't, you know, move up and down or anything like that. And then the last thing you do is you put the second hand on, and you want to make sure it's straight. And also there is a plastic coating that I mentioned that you peel off of your hands and pieces. So just make sure that it's peeled off, which I've already done that, but there's a nice little plastic coating that just keeps the brass from getting scratched up. So you've got to peel it off of your hands and your second hand. And then you just press this down at the very top until it kind of clicks, and then it's in place, and it'll be ready to put the battery. You put a AA battery in the back, and it is ready to go. And also you just want to make sure that if your hands are bent at all, to re-bend them and flatten them back out the way they should be. So there it is, all finished and resined. This was with FAMOWOOD resin, and you have to get the exact ratios for it to really mix up nice and great. My edges are not super smooth. I had a little bit of a tough time on the edges on this one, but it still looks lovely, and you don't really see the edges that much. The top looks fantastic. That's what you're going to see. So there it is, all resined in and so pretty. And I did have to do 3 coats because I had a few little craters from the silicone. So you got to really make sure to clean your silicone off really, really well before you use resin. And it took a couple of coats for the resin. So like I said, my numbers are totally sealed in. Even though they were dimensional, they're now covered with resin, so they're in there for good. And it is finished and ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.